Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. I am Dave Biddle. I am joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. It is signing day. The Buckeyes are going to sign another class that finishes number 2 in the nation. Two of my favorite classes ever were the 2013 class and 2017 class for the Buckeyes. Both finished number 2 in the country. I believe this is the 5th class that'll finish number 2 in the country since Urban took over. You know, we all want the Buckeyes to win a national championship, quote unquote, on the recruiting front. Eventually, they keep finishing as bridesmaids. I will take this. Even going back to Tressel's first real recruiting class, 2002, that class finished number 2 overall to Texas.
You know what the best part about this is that this is something I think going back to the start of the Urban era is that the difference is under Jim Tressel, you'd have like a top 5 class, and then you'd have somewhere like 15th, right? And then you'd have like a 7th class, and then like a 10th class, and then like a 15th, and then like a 4th, right? Every freaking year is top 5 since Urban has came pretty much. I think one year we were technically 6th, and I'm like, okay, that seems like nitpicking to not like, include this whole shebang. And the reality is, man, when you can stack talent upon talent, especially in the era of the transfer portal, this is huge for programs like Ohio State. And look, the number 1 national ranking, I guess Alabama just is always going to get it no matter what. What Ohio State's brought in here is an exceptional class. And you know what's funny? And this probably doesn't mean anything, but I'm just going to point it out because it's fun anyways. 2013, 2017, if you're doing patterns, that would be 2021. Yet another number 2 class every 4 years.
Yep.
This 2021 class pans out like the 2013 class that had all the stars in it, or the 2017 class where like half the class is a top 3 round pick after this upcoming draft. So it's exceptional. And I'm so excited to get these kids on campus. It's going to be certainly the best class of Ryan Day's tenure so far. But he's always seeming like he's trying to top himself. So this class might not even be done too, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not feeling good about Rajon Davis later today. I feel like he's headed to USC. I like that we have some drama on signing day. It feels a little old school to me, but I'm not feeling good about Rajon Davis. Where are you at?
I'm just I'm glad on signing day where our signing day experience isn't the way it used to be. And this is, if anybody knows me, they know like I love me some Jim Tressel. Like the last time I saw him, I had to restrain myself from bro hugging him because I didn't think his wife would approve. I love me some Jim Tressel. But every signing day under Jim Tressel, it was 4 kids were ready to pick OSU, except none of them would. And they put the OSU hat on the table just so they could pick a different one, right? So, like, I agree. I think Rajon Davis is going to end up going to USC as well. I'm thrilled he gave OSU as much consideration as he did, but it's hard to pull a kid from the West Coast whenever they have SC with any sort of competency on its side. And SC was somewhat competent this year. And I think that for whatever reason, people are feeling a little bit better about the Clay Helton experience. But the reality is that, hey, if he doesn't pick OSU, they gave it their best possible shot in the whole pandemic world. And you know what? Signing day drama doesn't really exist a lot anymore, like you were saying, right? So if there's a little drama, you never know if it can turn our way. We've been more surprised in the past. Remember when Cameron Hayward picked Ohio State despite the fact he never had visited campus and was picking between all Southern schools out of Georgia? So you never know. You just never know.
Speaking of that, do you miss the old days? They're not even that old. 5 years ago. I remember talking to you. We did the show 2013 recruiting class where Von Bell picked Ohio State on signing day. Would you rather have it like it used to be, where it was just, all in on the first Wednesday of February, or do you like it the way it is now, where you have the early signing period a little before Christmas and now what we have today?
Dude, I don't really like the Christmas signing period. I've never liked the Christmas signing period. I felt like you should have like an August 15th or something for like yes, I'm blatantly going here and I'm not changing my mind. And I think every early signature should have a clause in it that says if there is a coaching change at the head coaching position between now and the next signing day, that's null and void, right? That way that kids who commit to, say, a Tennessee and then their head coach, gets caught with the McDonald's bags full of money, then they're not stuck in their letter of intent, right? So, like, I think that's how it should be. December seems like it's almost pointless. It's like an extra month. Whoop-de-doo. Kids just enrolled early at that point, right? And there was always a little bit of fun. We used to talk about Urban was the spatula, right? He was going into the kitchen. He was going to go pick your best player and take it, right? Like, that made it more fun to me, right? I don't like the December signing period. And it also sets off the rhythm of all these coaches, right? Like, they're working towards signing day while preparing for a bowl game in a normal year and working with bowl practices. So and they're supposed to be on the road. And to me, it's stacking too many important things on top of each other in most of these situations, right? Not to mention, programs are more incentivized to get rid of coaches earlier so they can get replacements in earlier and disrupting seasons whenever people are in the middle of fire sale mode. And so you have, like, in the back in the day, it used to be get through the bowl games, pick your new coach, give him 3 weeks to get his class together, right? Now it's fire him 8 games into the season so you can try to pick somebody else's staff apart right after the conference championship games and give yourself a prayer to get a guy signed in the next week, right? I don't like the way the calendar's worked out. If you told me it was back to the original system or keep what we have, I'd go to the original system. It was more fun and it made more sense.
So JT Tuimoloau, the 5-star defensive tackle / strong side defensive end, I tend to think he'll be a 3-tech in college and the NFL, is going to wait till probably May, Bax, to make his decision. He's definitely not going to announce today, as everybody knows. What do you think is going to eventually happen with JTT?
I mean, does he even sign at that point? Like, he just enrolls at that point, right? Like, here's your scholarship papers. Welcome to campus, young man. I seriously think don't let him intense period expire at the end of April or something.
Terrell Pryor's like, dude, you're waiting a while here, man. You're kind of stringing it out here, bro.
Yeah, Terrell Pryor's like, is this enough attention yet? No, I mean, here's the problem. I can't give JTT any heck here, right? None. Like, that's not fair to the kid in a pandemic here where he hasn't been able to see all of his schools, right? And if you're one of those kids like him who's a blatant big star guy who is pretty tight vested on his recruiting, right? And he's from Washington, where it's not easy to just like get in a car and go visit somewhere, right? Like, if you're at Ohio State, you can get in a car over the summer. In a week period, you can drive through like the entire South, or you can drive through the entire Midwest, right? If you're in Seattle, it's like a whole day each way just to get to any other decent school outside of Oregon, right? Like, your drive to California is 2 days. You know what I mean? Like, you can't drive to like, Texas or wherever, right? You're way out in left field, relatively speaking, as a recruit. So it's flights everywhere. It's expenses. It's a kid who plays basketball who, frankly, was occupied playing multiple sports, which is what we always tell all these kids we wish they did, right? Play all the sports, be a kid. Don't pick one sport so you have to, right? So he hasn't had a chance to see all of his schools. He hasn't had a chance to really collect all of his data. He's waiting this long because he wants to get through all of his high school stuff and then make the best decision for himself. I think he heavily thinks it's going to be Ohio State, but he's in the catbird seat of being the number one recruit who everybody wants and everybody will bend over backwards to take. So he doesn't have to follow sign your letter of intent plan, right? He's not the number 364 rated player in the country. He's the number one. So you know what? JTT is going to show up wherever he wants to show up on June whatever and be part of somebody's summer program. And right now, I think if he had to pick, it would be Ohio State. But I think he wants to make sure it's the right choice for him. Just like we saw with Emeka Egbuka, right? He had to visit all of his finalists before he made his choice. And when he finally got his visit in, despite the big, push made in his final visit at Oklahoma, he knew where he wanted to go and it confirmed his choice. So I don't blame JTT for waiting. I frankly think he's going to end up at Ohio State. Why wouldn't you want to play for Larry Johnson? Why wouldn't you want to follow these Washington kids that are coming to Ohio State? I mean, every part of it makes sense. And Oregon's going to push for him, and SC is going to push for him, and Bama will push for him. But I think as of right now, if he's ending up anywhere, it's going to be Ohio State. And let's face it, our West Coast guy out there is probably the closest one to his recruitment. He's been saying that all along. Is it Brandon Huffman is the one out there covering him, Dave, right?
Yes. Yeah, Brandon Huffman does a great job. Hey, and very well said about JT taking his time. JT Tuimoloau taking his time. God bless him. I mean, my gosh, he hasn't even visited the campus yet. We can make Terrell Pryor jokes as I just did, but take your time, young man. This is a huge decision. He hasn't, I guarantee if it wasn't for the pandemic, he would have made his choice by now because he would have been able to visit and do everything that he wanted to do. So take your time, young man. And hopefully for the Buckeyes' sake, he will do the right thing in the end. All right, let's have a little fun here, man.
One other question for you. If he comes to Ohio
for it.
State, do I have to get the pronunciation on his name right? Because I keep screwing it up, and I'm going to call him JTT in perpetuity. Is everybody good with that?
Everybody calls him JTT. I think that's the safe way to go. But yeah, thanks to Bill Kurlick, I know it's Tuimoloau. Tuimoloau. So there we
That's
go.
like DJU from Clemson. Like, is it Ungalaile? Is how you're supposed to say his name? I think. Like I'm not playing around with pronouncing names wrong, right? My last name's Baxendell, but like JTT is just so much easier to say. I'm just going to refer to him as JTT in perpetuity now.
Notice how I stayed quiet when you asked me about DJU's pronunciation. I was like, yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah, I think you got it there. All right, let's have a little fun here. These are the real college football rankings for 2021. Vegas's rankings. So if you're trying to bet on college football in 2021, who's going to be the national champion? Here you go. Here are your rankings. Number 1, Alabama. And I'm going to give you the betting odds as well. Number 1, Alabama, plus 275. So if you bet 100 and Alabama wins the national championship, you get $275. Number 2, Clemson, plus 400, 4-1. Bet 100 on Clemson to win the title. They win it. You get 400. We'll go right down the list from there. Georgia, plus 450. Ohio State, number 4, plus 650. If you bet $100 on the Buckeyes to win the national championship, you will get $650. Number 5, Oklahoma, 8-1. Then there is a huge jump backs. So you got the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 teams, as I said, Bama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, all 8-1 or less to win the title. Number 6, do you have a guess?
I'm assuming it's Notre Dame because of all the gamblers that they're going to put dumb money on it.
Texas A&M.
Really?
And guess what the jump is? It is from plus 800, from 8-1 for Oklahoma to plus 2,800 to Texas A&M, from 5 to 6. So from 8-1 to 28-1, from 5 to 6. So basically they're saying, okay, it's going to be 4 of these 5 teams that are going to make it. Then we'll go from there just for people that you can react to this. Number 7, again, these are the Vegas, quote unquote, Vegas rankings. Number 7, LSU, 30-1. Tied for 8th, Iowa State and Texas, 33-1. 10th, Florida, 40-1. Tied for 11th, North Carolina and USC, 45-1. 13th, Ohio State's second opponent of the season, Oregon, 50-1. Again, these are odds to win the national championship in college football in 2021. There's a few more here. Number 14, Miami, the Hurricanes, not the Red Hawk. That's right. My niece Jennifer, although my niece Jennifer at Miami University, they could be in the running. You never know. Miami, 60-1. 15th, Notre Dame, 66-1. Finally, the Big Ten checks in again here. Penn State, 16th. 80-1, and then tied for 17th, Michigan and Wisconsin, 100-1. Bax, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Notre Dame and Michigan are going to change significantly. I'm shocked they're that low just because those are the 2 schools that the Vegas suckers bets have always been on. Like, I used to go out to Vegas every summer in July when I used to run my ticketing company, which isn't the thing thanks to the pandemic right now. But we would go out there and we'd laugh every summer because Michigan would be 12-1, 13-1. And it was because their massive fan base of people would all go out there, get drunk, and convince themselves that Michigan was actually going to win something. And it was like the safest money the casino ever made. And that says a lot because you're in a casino. Now, of those odds, look, the top 5 make total sense outside of Georgia, which is hilarious. Georgia's just them saying, well, in case they win the SEC, they're going to be a 1-4 proposition to win the championship. We all know Georgia's not winning a national championship. Like, what was the last time Georgia had good quarterback play? Matthew Stafford? And even then, he was like Jeff George in college. Like, he would try to throw the ball through people. So Georgia being on that list is hilarious to me. Georgia is like the ultimate program of like, well, we're going to get like a ton of talent, and then we're going to do absolutely nothing with it, right? Like, good quarterback play at Georgia only exists when their quarterbacks leave and go elsewhere, like Justin Fields. So, the other ones just don't surprise me. Like, that's the reality is that, you know, Clemson we know is going to be good. Bama is like, they're the favorite until they don't win it. Like, let's be blunt at this point. Like, Saban's won 6 national titles there, right? And then Oklahoma being in the list is, look, they're probably going to win the Big 12. They're probably going to be the 4 seed like usual. And in the off chance they actually develop a defense, well, that's kind of Vegas hedging their bet, right? So the real kicker to this is it really exemplifies when I talk about the hyper elites. Every Bucknuts column that I write on the Bucket on Sundays, it always talks about the hyper elites. The hyper elites are the schools that are always there. They're the ones that are always in the top 5 in recruiting. They're the ones that are always in the playoffs, it seems like. And that's Ohio State. That's Alabama. That's Clemson. And if you look since the playoffs started, those are the ones who've won it. Ohio State, Alabama, and Clemson. That's because they get the most talent. They spend the most money on good coaching. And they're always in position to win a championship. And the gap with the playoff, like one of the criticisms of a playoff before it started that I dismissed, but I kind of started to buy into a little bit is that it's going to narrow down to the haves and have-nots even more. So that there's a ton of schools who make a ton of money, but aren't successful on the field. And the only way that top programs really get knocked off is by scandal or retirements of elite coaches, right? Like when Saban retires, the SEC is going to become a shooting gallery of, even more so than it already is, of just mayhem and people popping up and down to win it every year, right? If Dabo wasn't at Clemson, well, who knows what would happen in the ACC because it's not that great of a conference, right? But Ohio State is currently sitting on top of the Big Ten and squashing everybody else. And all these recruits we're talking about at these schools in particular, and to a lesser extent, even Oklahoma, like, look, Caleb Williams is coming from Washington, D.C. to go to Oklahoma. Like, that's just an example of what we're seeing, right? These kids around the country, as the world gets smaller and we're getting more connected by social media and we're more involved with screen time than ever in the world of the pandemic, these kids are all clustering together to go to these top schools, right? Like, these kids are recruiting each other as much as the coaches anymore. And you're going to continue to see this consolidation into a top couple programs, of which it's become very clear as we get further into the playoff era that Ohio State is firmly ensconced as one of the 3 true hyper elites. And then I would tell you Oklahoma is right behind those programs just because of their easier path to the playoff. And it's going to require a big seismic shift, like USC getting their act together and making the Pac-12 a real championship contender, or Saban retiring at Alabama and somebody else like Georgia having an opportunity to win in the SEC. But right now you have 3 hyper elites and the other programs that are sort of on the cusp of catching them, which is Oklahoma and the designated, we think they're going to be second in the SEC team, which in this case is Georgia. And then there's everybody else. And that's kind of what we're seeing across college football in terms of a big picture point of view.
Great stuff from Matt Baxendell. You can catch his column every Sunday. It is The Bucket. Programming note, Bucknutters, we are going to interview Ryan Day at 9 a.m. this morning. The local media will interview head coach Ryan Day at 9 a.m. this morning. So check Bucknuts for full coverage of that. We will have a story. We will have video. We will have sidebars. So keep it locked to Bucknuts for coverage of Ryan Day's press conference again this morning at 9 a.m.